Welcome, everybody, and it is another episode of Potentials. We're going to be speaking about the Wingmakers tonight, and we have Ed Kuberski back on Potentials tonight. Thank you once again for coming back.
Thank you for having me back again, Ligia. Yeah, this topic is probably one of the most exciting ones that we're going to talk about. Mostly because Ligia and I both went down the same path. I started in 2015, 2016 with the Wingmakers, and in a really deep kind of way. In fact, just some background. When I did the Wingmakers and I dove into it, there's something called the looking glass, and it's a time technology where they can look forward or backward in time and record it like a movie. I didn't see those actual movies, but I was allowed to see all of the transcripts, and there were hundreds of them. So literally, I got to go back and forth in time and read what they had saw with the looking glass. And the reason why we're talking about it is because the Wingmakers has to do with something called the ACIO, and so it's ACIO, that's Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization. And it was a really big group of people that no one knew about. And we're going to dive into it as we go through this. But one thing I do want to say is I read in here, and we'll go through it in possibly later shows, that even if you look at when they did the bomb, when they did the Manhattan Project, they said that the resources that were thrown at the Manhattan Project, the ACIO looked like kindergarten. That looked like kindergarten compared to what they did with the ACIO. So the Manhattan Project is like kindergarten compared to the ACIO. So this is a very, very powerful organization that was worldwide. And unfortunately, there were links to the Freemasons in some ways, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit. It's something, yeah, you probably don't know. I forgot about, and when I read through it again, I realized that there is possibly some links there. Not that they were in control, total control, but as we go along, we'll actually understand that there was actually another alien group that was the consortium, I think it was called.
All right.
Right.
I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were actually involved or connected directly with the ACIO. So there was outside influences, extraterrestrial outside influences as well. So that again leads me back to this Freemason connection, possibly, right? And so, yeah, so there's a lot going on with this. So we're going to kind of dive into it. But I think first, Ligia and I wanted to show you some pictures and stuff, right? And some websites.
There is a lot to unpack here, but it's going to be very, very vivid and very beautiful to look at. So, okay, this is the Wingmakers original website. Because there is another one, just so you know, there's another one out there that they changed the original one, and kind of, I don't know if it was, per se hijacked, but it was definitely changed. So this one has the original, what they found in the chambers when they discovered the Wingmakers cave, right?
Yeah, and it was in 1972 when they first discovered it. And the Wingmakers Cave has 23 different chambers that has artwork, which is what Ligia's got up here. And there was also music, poetry, philosophy, and technologies in each of the chambers.
Yeah.
And the last chamber held, the 23rd chamber had this optical disc, and it took them a really long time to sort of decipher what was on it. But when they did, there was over 8,000 pages of information on it. So just so people understand what we're talking about when we talk about the Wingmakers, it's a cave that they found. It's 80 miles northeast of Chuckle Canyon, so it's in near the Four Corners. And
And
that
Chaco
this came
Canyon is where? Where is Chaco Canyon? What state?
New Mexico,
Okay.
right? Yeah. So the Four Corners is you would probably know better because you're from the States. The Four Corners is New Mexico and I can't
Arizona,
remember.
Colorado, and Utah, I believe.
Yeah. And the other thing that's kind of important here too is the Anasazi are involved with the Wingmakers in some ways. And in 1987, my first really deep dive into almost anything except for Edgar Casey. That was my first deep dive. But the second one was the Anasazi. And that was in 1987. And so here we are all these years later, and we're going to talk about the Anasazi again. And the fact that the Anasazi actually were part of this, and then about 200 years later, they literally disappeared, like as in time traveled out of here.
Mm-hmm.
The whole tribe was gone.
Right.
Like nobody understood what happened. But I think when we dive into this, we're going to probably get a better understanding of it all.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
And also just want to show them like maybe a couple other paintings so that they can see how beautiful they are. And as you can see, there's a sort of like a language, a written language around it. This is not just art. This is literally a language. They're symbols, but they mean something. And I don't know if we know what they mean, but if there's anyone out there that reads or speaks a light language, you may be able to get a better look at this. Unfortunately, I can't bring it up any closer, but if you go to this website and make sure that you get the correct one, it's wingmakers.us. This one, it has all of the details in there and you can look at it a little bit closer, but it's in most of their paintings, there's this type of light language all around. And the one that I found the most interesting was, where's the one with the portal? I'm not sure. This looks like a portal too. And that's why I think
it sure does.
Like this especially is a very elliptical portal.
Yeah.
So it's in the sky. So again, I'm thinking, where did they go? Maybe they went through a portal, perhaps.
Well, that's quite possible because
you've done that a lot.
what we're going to learn about is time travel here.
Right.
And the other thing that I wanted to say was both Ligia and I did this in 2016, and I think Ligia said it was 2020, so it was like 4 years later. But we took exactly the same path. I was looking for time travel information, and I came across the Wingmakers, and Ligia and I talked about it before originally, and she said that was the same thing for her. So it's pretty interesting that we're both sitting here bringing this to you guys right now. It's fantastic, actually.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It was 3 years ago when I stumbled across the Wingmakers, and I don't remember even how I did it. I was just going down a rabbit hole in 2020. I think all of us were. A lot of us were, especially Starseeds. And the Starseeds were like, what's going on? And so we had all this free time to investigate and research, and that's what I ended up doing. And I found the Wingmakers, and me and my friend Sarah were just going gaga over the Wingmakers. We could not stop talking about and looking at beautiful art and trying to figure out what this is about. And are they from the future? Are they our future selves? And what is this? So again, there's this music also. There's all these chambers that have music in them too. So I can't play it on my PC, but I know that if you go to there's the portal. If you go to YouTube and type in Wingmaker Ancient Arrow Project, Chambers 1 through 9, you will find this music. I hope you
and it's cool. Frequencies. So with frequencies, with music, we can have a lot of information put on top of that music also.
Yeah.
So that's something that we have to realize. We're not just listening to music, we're actually listening to a huge download of information in every single one of those chambers.
Right.
And they're all different. every chamber had different music, different picture, different technology, different philosophy, different poems, right?
And this
So
is
that's
another, yes, this is another thing I wanted to show as well. This is light language, right? So I'm
wow.
gonna take a look at these symbols and how similar they are to the possible, like what we're seeing here. You know,
Yeah,
there's a lot of similarities, so I'm thinking there's a correlation between light language and what's happening. And a lot of people are discovering their light language right now. It's becoming more, we're tapping into our gifts and our powers right now, the star seeds. And this is
yeah,
one of the things that we're receiving, when we have our antennas up. So, I'm just going to encourage you to look into light language. If you feel like it resonates with you, or there's something that draws you to it, continue searching in that direction. And again, the wing makers, there you go. It's a very good example of what's going on there. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that.
yeah, that's beautiful. And yeah, the like you said, the music, and even the pictures, what I'll give you a little bit of information, because what they found, was that these people came from the 28th century, and they time traveled back to the 8th century and actually built this cave and did all this art and everything, and then they went on to wherever they went to. But they were able to time travel back, and then a lot of the information we're going to talk about is about time travel and even portals and things like that. And there's some really beautiful things here. So we'll just get into it. And what it is I took all the information that's on this website and printed it off, and there were 11 documents, and I went through all 11 of them and figured out. I highlighted what was important, what was not important. Then I wrote it down, and there's probably going to be. I was saying to Ligia, there could be 7 or even 8 of these. There's so much information. So this is just the first one. And we're just going to go through and give you 23 talking points about it. And Ligia and I will talk back and forth. And the reason why we did 23 is because there's 23 chambers. So let's get into it. We'll get into the first one. Yeah. So I think, are you going to bring up the first? Oh, okay.
We're going back to the paintings.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe bring up the
Okay,
first.
there we go.
Although we're not doing these in any kind of order of chambers, but what Ligia and I decided was we'll probably bring up like about 3 or 4 of the paintings every show, and just kind of show you guys and what they are, but they don't necessarily correlate to all of these talking points. This is all from those documents that I found, and this is exactly what they said. So as long as I pronounce things correctly, you're going to hear basically what they said. So the first one we're going to go with is in 1972, in a remote section of northern New Mexico, a group of hikers discovered an unusual artifact and the pictographs within an obscure canyon. An archaeologist from the University of New Mexico analyzed the artifact and searched the area where it was discovered. It was presumed to have a nomadic Native American Indian tribe that had occasionally used the canyon as a temporary settlement and had left behind a few artifacts of their presence as a conquest. So basically the cave was found in 1972, but as we go into it, we're going to find out that nothing was really done with it. And I think you were right, Ligia. It was somewhere in the 90s when they started to actually work with the technology and whatnot, and get into figuring out what was really going on. So it sat dormant for quite a long time.
Yep.
And I think it was this organization again that we're talking about that doesn't want information like this out there, especially when it has to do with star seeds.
Right.
The other thing that I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think there's a correlation between the Wingmakers caves and the Intergalactic Confederation, who are the seeders, who actually brought 22 genetic projects to Earth and actually seeded us as man. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think there's some correlations between the two. So we'll kind of go through those as we go along. This is really going to be interesting. I'm gonna bring up a word here that Ligia, her ears might perk up here. So there was, however, two very puzzling questions. All but one of the artifacts could be dated to the 8th century AD. So that's where we get this dating from. The exception known as the compass artifact, Ligia. The compass artifact. So remember we were talking about using our starseed compasses before in previous conversations. I highlighted that and just thought it was interesting that that's what they called it. So that was the exception, and the compass artifact appeared to be an unusual form of technology. The compass was covered in strange hieroglyphic symbols, which is interesting again, right?
You like this?
Yeah, right. So just, probably like the light language that you were just showing people, right?
Right.
And that. So the pictographs that were found in the area had inexplicably appeared, and they were strikingly different from all of the other native petroglyphs or rock art found in the southeast, or even on the whole entire continent for that matter. So they looked at everything and they said, "Wow, this is really something unique, right? Something no one's ever seen before." Because of these two anomalies, the artifacts and the entire project quickly became the property of the US government. So here we go, right? Or more specifically, the National Security Agency. So the NSA. So this is important in all of this as we learn what happened here. So the NSA was handed over to them. It was decided that these artifacts might suggest a prehistoric extraterrestrial presence on Earth, Ligia. How's that one for you? Right?
Yeah.
And and of course, as star seeds now, we know the truth about everything going on out there upstairs, as we call it. So this is pretty interesting. And again, that group of men that I was talking about that control this, or did control this, wouldn't want us to know about extraterrestrial presence on Earth or star seeds or anything like that, right, Ligia? Yeah.
No.
So yeah. So the site was completely searched by a secret department of the NSA in 1973. So the year later, the National Security Agency went in there, and it fell into the archives of the NSA under the code name Ancient Arrow. So that's something that everyone should kind of remember.
Right. It's right up here on the Wingmaker's website, Ancient Arrow Project. So that's yes.
Exactly. So now, and you were right, saying it was in the 90s, because this is where it explains what happened. In 1993, a series of rock slides opened up a section of the Ancient Arrow site. The canyon was in a naturally obscure section of parkland held by the state of New Mexico. So it was already kind of on government land, right? A small team of operatives from the NSA visited Ancient Arrow Canyons to do some follow-up research. So this is 1973, after the rock slide. They discovered the rock slide had exposed an entrance to a hidden cavern that led deep within the canyon walls. So they found some of it in early 72, 73, and then this rock slide opened up a whole bunch more things happening, right? The research team discovered a well-hidden entrance in the interior of the canyon wall or rock structure of the Ancient Arrow sites. They found they found a system of tunnels and chambers that had been carved from solid rock. There were a total of 23 chambers, Each chamber held a specific wall painting series of pictographs, written hieroglyphs, and what seemed like to be a dormant alien technology. Again, Ligia, we're back to this, and it's kind of cool that they described a series of pictographs and hieroglyphs. So that's something that I don't even think is on the site, or maybe that's some of the stuff that's down the sides of some of these documents.
Yeah,
Right? But they don't actually describe where they came from or which chamber they came from and anything like that. And
yeah, I don't think so.
yeah. Oh, the other thing that I forgot to say was a lot of this information comes from, her name is Annie, right?
And it's right here on this page that I'm on right now. This is the interview between Dr. Anderson and Anne, who was a journalist who interviewed this doctor who had actually been to and worked with the Wingmakers. He'd been to the cave. He
Yeah.
was the only one who could actually communicate with the Wingmakers
Yep.
because of his high frequency and his ability to understand them telepathically. So this whole entire interview with him is on the Wingmakers site, on the original Wingmakers site.
Yeah.
And
And
the interesting thing is that they talk about, which I'll go into later, but it talks about the ACIO right here.
yeah, yeah,
Talk
and we'll
about,
talk about that. Um,
right.
what I wanted to say, and I don't even know if you know this, but there are two interviews with Dr. Anderson on this website, but
Mhm.
and actually did 5 interviews, and so there are 3 missing. So
Yes,
there's a lot of information that's not here.
right.
And even the optical disc, the information that came off of it, I think they said at some point they had only sort of deciphered 7% of it.
Wow.
So there's
They probably
tons, right?
weren't meant to yet. And for me, I feel like it's all a timing issue, that things will happen as they're meant to in the time that they're meant to happen.
Yeah, I
Just
thousand
like,
percent agree with you
just like
there.
with the ark, being discovered, that JP just, talked about with Dr. Sala, and JP went into like some detail about what he saw and how it was behaving and what he, what he discovered there. And when he was discussing these details, Dr. Sala said, sounds like the Wingmakers. So it's very,
Ah,
so I found that to be very interesting that even Dr.
yeah,
Sala referenced the Wingmakers.
yeah. And Ligia told me about that the other day. I haven't watched it yet. And there's a thing that Dr. Sala had done originally, I think 7 or 8 months ago, and Ligia, I think, will have it in the links.
I'm
And
gonna have
it's
that and the most recent one in the link to description, yes.
yeah, that's perfect. So that we'll talk a little bit more about all of that in quite detail. Although with the first interview, I don't think Dr. Sala said wingmakers, but I had wingmakers on my radar. Legion knows because we've talked about this a lot, because that's something that we really have in common is the wingmakers, and how it's actually affected us too, because it's almost like a passion. The first time I went through it, I almost fell in love with it. And then I didn't really do anything until just recently, the last couple of weeks. And it was the same thing again. I fell deeply in love with it this time again. So there's a lot more going on here than just pictures and whatnot. There's
It's
information and downloads
it's a
for everyone.
communication. It's open communication. They're trying to communicate with us, and
Yeah,
it feels benevolent. It doesn't feel malevolent at all.
exactly.
It feels
Yeah.
like a very high frequency kind of um positive vibe that I'm getting. Whenever I read it, it was like, wow, this is beautiful. They're not trying to hurt us with this. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't get that. The interesting thing that I will mention, because I have it up and I just saw it here, and it says the accepted purpose was to develop blank slate technology, or BST. It's a
Yeah.
form of time travel that enables the rewrite of history at what we are called intervention points.
Yeah.
Intervention points are the causal energy centers that create a major event like the breakup of the Soviet Union or the NASA space program. So
Mhm.
he's talking about blank slate, okay? And this is what I find very interesting. right now because I had never, I heard of blank slate technology from the wing makers when I read this 3 years ago.
Oh, I know what you're gonna dig up because you showed this to me a little
I
while
can't
back
believe
and
that
we
this,
were
I
blown
was
away,
shocked when I saw,
blown away.
like,
Yep,
I had not seen this 3 years ago. I Googled blank slate 3 years
yep,
ago.
yep.
And now
And here it is.
August 2023, blank slate sign multi-year partnership agreement to improve outcomes in the zero fault aviation environments.
Yep,
What? And then
exactly.
Department
Who's
of
that?
Defense.
Who's
What?
that?
What? Defense Innovation Unit. What?
Yep,
Pushing the
yep.
limits of the human brain. Hello, blank state
Oh,
combines
yep.
cognitive science and artificial intelligence to reduce operational risk for high performance teams. What the fuck is this? Seriously.
Awesome.
Really?
I know, right?
Come on
And
now. Okay, so this is not a coincidence. This is not
ex
a coincidence. This was in
exactly.
1997, all right? When this interview was held. He's talking about blank slate technology in 1997.
Yep,
Hello,
yep.
people, time
And
travel.
here we are all these years later, and the DOD of all people. I know when you showed me that, it was quite a while ago.
But
I was blown away by what
uh,
you had brought up there,
this is
right?
insane. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's everything is synchronous with all of this disclosure and with the star seeds. Ligia and I've found many synchronous things with
Yeah.
many different people with many different topics. But it's all we're all part of this machine, and we all have, or let's say it's more like a puzzle. We all have a tiny little piece of the puzzle, and we're all important. Every single one of us is important in finding who we truly are first, and then once we do that, then all of the stuff that's actually inside of you starts to come out, and that's your galactic heritage and all these connections and these things. So
Yeah.
that's beautiful, right? That's we'll probably dig into that a little bit more in further shows, because I concentrated on the actual Wingmaker document, so I wanted to have the exact words for you guys,
Yeah.
right?
Sorry,
Yeah.
distract you. I
No,
got,
no, this is awesome, right? And I love
I
and I
mean,
actually love when you jump in and do this, as a matter of fact. I
like,
do,
this
because
is just,
yeah. If I could have you read these words, I'd make you do it.
yeah, well, I do
I'd
it.
ask you to. I know,
There's
yeah.
there's a video too. I'm not gonna watch this right now, but I'm gonna be looking at this later after we get off this call.
I know. And that too. That's
Maybe.
awesome.
Yeah,
And I have a document that I'm going to send you that correlates to that
yeah,
totally. So, okay, let's carry on, because we have quite a few more points to go through here. So, once the entrance to the cavern was found, the project was formally brought under the jurisdiction of the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization, the ACIO. And this is the organization that is so secret that nobody knew about it. And in fact, there was so much resources thrown at it that it made the Manhattan Project look like a kindergarten school. And
yeah,
that's a huge statement. That is a huge statement when you say that. So this ACIO, which organized an interdisciplinary research team to assess the exact nature of the site and attempt to discover additional artifacts or evidence of extraterrestrial visitation. So we're back to that again. The ACIO is a secret or an unacknowledged department of the National Security Agency. So there it is right there. You have the National Security Agency, and deeply embedded in that, you have something called the ACIO, or the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization. And what are we talking about right now, Ligia? As starseeds, we're talking about making communications with extraterrestrials, and eventually one day actually meeting them here on Earth, because that's
I think
ultimate,
that's
right?
going to happen sooner than later. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So the ACIO was the lowest profile organization within the entire intelligence community. So nobody really knew what they were. Its agenda is to research, assimilate, and replicate any technologies or discoveries of ancient extraterrestrial origin or extraterrestrial origin. So we're back to this again. If anything is extraterrestrial, then it actually would have went to them. So even maybe some of the Roswell stuff ended up in their hands.
Yeah.
Is a thought that I just had, right? It could very well be. Its personnel mainly consisted of scientists who were completely anonymous, yet were paid salaries in excess of $400,000 a year. This is back in the 90s,
Just
right?
back, yeah, that was a lot of money back then.
That's
Yep.
yeah, it's still a lot of money, right?
Yeah, but
Um,
back then,
yeah,
yeah,
that's like like probably three times or twice
yeah,
as much, right?
yeah, probably three
Um,
times as much as what.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So yeah, they're paid $400,000 a year because of their security clearance and their IQ. So they were also chosen for this. It is also in possession of technologies that are far in advance of any other research facility on the planet. They are, in a word, privileged. Now, having said that, um, I know all about William Tompkins and all of his work and everything that he did at TRW. I would say that their research facilities were actually the best on the planet, and maybe the ACIO's was equal or lesser than that, because what they did with Solar Warden is mind-boggling, and we'll get into that as we go along. So, did the creators of the site intermingle with the native tribes or remain an isolated culture? Sort of just a question. Um, who were they, and why were they here in the 8th century? So
Hmm.
why did they choose that timing, right?
Right.
Um, Gradually, a hypothesis was structured by the research team that an extraterrestrial culture established uh, an Earth colony in the 8th century. So, they literally time traveled here from the 28th century. And we know this because of the information that's in the optical discs that we're going to talk about later. And they traveled to the 8th century. They they did this, and for what purpose? Right?
It
That's a
was
really good
probably
question.
a lot easier for them to communicate with people from the 8th century because they didn't have the distractions that we have today, and they were
Wow.
in touch with their intuition.
Hmm.
They're probably a lot more spiritual, because they
Love
might
it.
have in a more tribal time period. They were more connected to each other and to the earth.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they would have been a lot more receptive to listening to the wingmakers and to what they would have to say, and they wouldn't have been afraid of them because they
Yeah.
probably looked at them as though they were either some type of god or they were some type of um, spirit or something that they would see regularly with their medicine because
Yeah.
they were used to seeing other realms, especially tribal nations were used to seeing other realms on a regular basis, and they traversed a lot more than we do into other dimensions and densities. So
Definitely. Yeah.
we really, I mean, I can see how that would have happened so much easier back then, and why they had to wait till now, because it's taken us this long to even get this far, which isn't
Yeah.
great to begin with. We're
Yeah.
getting there, but yeah, I mean,
That
already
that
there.
is such a beautiful point that I never even thought about. That, yeah, you're exactly right. The natives of that time would have been much more spiritual and connected to source directly, and
Yeah.
and to Terra, to the land, and to Soul, to the sun, and everything, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something I didn't even think about. And why now? I think the reason why now is because of what's going on in the world, and the fact that these intergalactic confederation people also known as the Cedars, came back, and they're here now, and they're watching what's going on, and they are sort of they're helping us as best they can. And I think we're at this point where things are going to change drastically in the future, and everything is going to get much, much better. Because that's part of what Ligia and I are trying to do, is bring hope to everyone and show you what we know, and what we can see in the future, from everything that we've gone through and things that we've researched, right, Ligia?
Well, right. Well, it's also because it's an an entry point. You know, at this point in time right now is an entry point, where I hate to
Yes.
say the new age word, but it is a new age, literally a new era,
Yeah.
where we're coming into. It's the uptick of the Turing wave. You know, we're going up,
Yeah,
we're ascending up instead of, you know, down. So
I
we're
love
that
that.
we're at that, you know, that point where we need to have an insert, and that's where this comes in. It's an insert point.
So essentially, you just read it. They said that they use intervention points. This is basically the intervention point that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's not just the wing makers. Like, I think the wing makers are, like I said, the Cedars, themselves, so many other groups that are here too. It's not just them. There's tons and tons of others. And,
Well,
and
they're all
this is,
connected. We're all
yeah,
connected.
yeah.
So yeah.
And we're talking, and what I'm talking about are actual physical meat suits, like people. But there are also, as we well know, angelic realms that are also here that are not physical, right? So there's all of that as well, and even other dimensions could even be in on this as well, because of what's going on in Earth right now needs to be dealt with, and we need to, like Ligia said, get back into our spiritual, natural path, and that's going to lead us into a golden age of the future, essentially, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So, talking about they established an Earth colony in the 8th century. They brought with them a very precise mission to leave behind a massive time capsule. So that's literally what we've got here. That would prove to be discovered in the late 20th century.
Mhm.
So here we are, right? And
Well, that was the late 20th century. It was the 1990s, right?
yep, yeah, exactly. And it was first found in 72. So yeah, right.
But
It's,
yeah, they didn't really dig it out and really
yeah,
start discovering it until the 90s.
yeah,
And that was the
94.
late
Yeah,
20th century. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
94.
and really when you start talking and you look at Anne's journal and the interview transcripts, and you see that interview with the Dr. Anderson, who really had discovered a lot of the information and was able to interpret most of it. That was, it was mind boggling at the time.
Yeah.
It blew her mind. And, you know, I think back to what life was like in the 90s, and I don't think most people would have been able to
Yeah,
handle this information, not even
that
in
was
97.
one thing about it too is Dr. Anderson was the scientist that actually deciphered the codes that made that optical disc work. So he was deeply involved with it. And it's like Lee just said, they chose somebody to represent them, and that was him. And eventually they actually had started, he said he had 3 contacts, direct contacts with them. And as we go through things, we're going to talk about it. And so it's really, really interesting. So the 23 separate chambers seem to be linked together to form some specific message or purposeful mission. In the 23rd and final chamber, they recovered a small optical disc that was presumed to hold digital information that could be the key to deciphering the artifacts. There were 2 scientists from the research team who theorized that the disc could be unlocked by understanding the meaning of the wall paintings in each of the 23 chambers. So that's kind of interesting, right? So one day in the summer of 1996, one of the scientists, a linguistics expert, had an insight into how to unlock the optical disc by reducing the symbols reducing the symbols of the wall paintings to their closest facsimiles found in facsimiles. Thank you. The closest facsimile found in ancient Sumerian text. And I know that's going to perk Ligia's ears up again because we've talked about Sumeria before and Sumerian writing and whatnot. So they thought that the Sumerian text had something to do with it. So while the Sumerian language is extinct, it was sufficiently comprehensive to the scientists that he was able to decode the symbols of the paintings and placing the 23 words in the same order as the ancient arrow chambers. He was able to finally unlock the optical disc. So they're talking about Dr. Anderson here, right? He's the one that did that. So the connection between the Sumerian language and the time capsule was the breakthrough that the ACIO team had been waiting for. A simple set of 23 words actually opened up over 8,000 pages of data from the optical disc. And it was determined that even within the optical disc, there were segmentations of data within the 23 units. So even within that, there's again another layer of data again, right? So these are huge data downloads.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just had a thought. You
Yeah,
know, okay, this is the year 2023, right? Or
yeah,
it
it
year
was.
2023,
Yeah,
right? And we're going, and we just went into 2024 and
yeah,
23 chambers,
I know, right?
and there's a missing one, 2024.
I
I don't,
I think I think that's correct on what I've read. Although I don't know if it's if they found another chamber within the 23 or they actually found another time capsule, because I don't know if I said this at the beginning. There are actually 7 of these time capsules across the Earth,
right.
and this is only one of them. I do know about another one that we're going to talk about in Romania, and we'll have shows on that as well. I know a lot about that one. I've got a lot of information on that one, and that was all back when I did the ACIO stuff again. When I first dove into this, I found out about the Romanian one. So I think that's the second one. But yeah, whether it's the cave that JP went into, we're not 100% sure, but I think it is because Dr. Sala talked about it.
Yeah.
But there is also another cave called the Kincaid Caves that was found in the Grand Canyon, and there that could be that one as well. So, and we will talk more about that as we go along in these shows as well. So, it was determined that even within the okay, I read that part. So each unit contained philosophy, science, papers, poetry, music, and introduction to the culture and identity of their creators, of its creators. And again, where did they come from? Well, they came from the 28th century. Are they us as humans in the 28th century? Or, where did they come from? Did they come from another dimension? Which is quite possible. I know Ligia's huge into that. So there's still some questions to be answered. And if we had all 5 of the interviews, then we might know more as well, because we only have 2 of them. So there's a lot of missing information as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I don't remember if it's the new Wingmaker site that claims that they are our future selves, but I have heard that that's what some people believe, that is that the Wingmakers are ourselves in the future, like
Yeah.
way in the future.
They actually say it within these words that I've written it down a few times in my book here, so they actually say it. So I haven't looked at that other site at all, honestly, because I know it's been manipulated. We know that.
Right. That's why we don't recommend looking at that, because it could just be too confusing, especially if you're used to this.
Yeah, and if there's any downloads of real huge information from these hieroglyphs or these pictures or anything, that's going to be compromised, right?
Right.
They literally do not want us, especially starseeds, but everyone, it's not just us, looking at this stuff because there are triggers. It's going to trigger people.
Right.
Because I know it's already triggered me. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, I should put a trigger warning on this, because really, if you do already have some kind of connection to this in some way, you're a soul connection, some kind on some level, you're going to feel something when you look at this. You're gonna feel something when you look at the paintings, when you see the symbols, when
Yeah.
you listen to music. And also, if you do get a download when you watch these or when you look at this, please, let me know.
Yeah,
In
right.
the comments, just, let us know what you think and how you feel about this, because I feel like this is only the beginning. This is only the tip of the iceberg. Things are going to happen.
Yeah. I totally agree with you there, exactly. And again, I think that's part of what we're trying to do on potentials is just to trigger people into certain things. We don't even know what triggers people, but certain words or
Kind of a
certain
jump start.
phrases.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I don't even want to say trigger like that sound. That's kind of got a negative connotation. I mean,
yeah.
really, like we're trying to jumpstart you into your gifts, into your you
Mm,
know, your what your mission is, what you have to offer, what you're going to be
yeah.
doing in the next, few decades or whatever, however long it's going to take. Hopefully not that long.
Yeah, that's for sure.
We're trying to make it sooner, but if you have some kind of a skill or a gift that you don't even know, that you haven't even come into yet, but you're starting to feel it, you're sensing it, you're coming into it, just I want to encourage you to keep pursuing that. Don't feel like you're weird or like this nobody's going to accept you, because we'll accept you. I'll accept you. I love you.
Absolutely.
And I want to see you progress, and let's all come together and do this together. Not, we don't need to put each other down or to feel weird about it. This is something that's really super cool, and it's going to benefit everyone. It's going to benefit humanity and the entire earth, like the natural organic earth, that
Yeah.
all trees and the nature. And so, yeah, let's come together and do this. Anyway, enough of
Ligia, that is beautifully put. And I just want to say ditto to everything you just said.
that.
Because because you and I actually always seem to see the same things or resonate at the same level. And okay, the creators of the time capsule refer to themselves as the Wingmakers. They represented a future version of humanity who lives some 750 years in our future. They had left behind a total of 7 time capsules in various parts of the world to be discovered according to a well orchestrated plan. Now, I know a lot about the plan with Val Thor and so on. I'm going to suggest that that's what we're talking about here, is this thing that's unfolding as we speak on Terra. Uh, their apparent goal was to help the next several generations. So Ligia just actually had a great thing where she was talking about how that's the goal of us, is trying to accelerate the ascension of us, essentially, right? That's ultimately our goals, and that seems like that's in line with the Wingmakers as well, too, right? Which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Um, their apparent goal was to help the next several generations of humans develop a global culture of the unified system of philosophy, science, and art. And basically, they're saying we all got to get the fuck. We got to realize that we're all one family, and we got to quit blowing ourselves up and doing what we truly should do, and finding out who we truly are, Ligia. That's I like always saying that, right? Once you learn,
Remembering who we are, basically. We're just
yeah, that's right. Remembering who we are. That's correct. That's right. Because it's all within us. if you're searching, you actually need to search within yourself. That's where you're going to find the answers ultimately, as we go along. So in early 1997, the ACIO scientists who had originally discovered the access code, so they're talking about Dr. Anderson here, the access code for the optical disc became strangely sympathetic with the Wingmaker's mission. So he basically was falling in love with everything he was hearing and seeing and feeling. He also claimed that he was in communication with the Wingmakers, and they were watching the ACIO's progress and would, at the appropriate time, make the time capsule and its contents available to the public. So that's interesting too. And if we're correct about this cave with Dr. Sala and JP, we could be on the precipice of exactly what they just said, of this going to the public. So it's interesting that you and I are very, very passionate about bringing this to everyone. I don't think there's anything that I'm more passionate about than this, and that includes having connections with Chris Beskar and even Frank Chile and stuff. This stuff is even more. I'm more passionate about this because I think this is more about the future.
I do, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I'm future driven, and
that's for sure.
I'm trying to remember the future, and it's every day trying to remember the future. See what do I, because it's really like time is not linear. It is not.
Correct.
That
Yeah.
everybody, it's hard to understand, but it
Yeah.
isn't. And so we don't have to think of time as, well, I have to go back to the past and I have to go forward to the future. It's really about being inside of yourself. And when you are meditating and you're inside of yourself, there is no such thing as time. So
Yeah.
therefore you can be anywhere, any time, any place. You could go into the future and see a timeline that could be your possible timeline. And if that's the one that you really want, then you can connect with it while you're still inside of yourself. And that's the line that I'm trying to get everybody to connect on, because we can make that positive timeline that's good for everyone, not just for you, but for everyone. The one that's good for everything that exists. And so that's what we need to concentrate. What does that look like? Not just what you want, not just what you're trying to manifest for yourself, but what you want for everyone.
Yes, correct. Yeah, so beautifully put. Something that just came to me when you're talking about meditating is that, and this time, is that we know that from the Turing wave, that on the backside of the Turing wave, or the negative side of the Turing wave, that's where all of the information is. So when you're meditating, you are accessing the information that's on the backside of the Turing wave, or in the negative energy realm, right?
Which is where the potentials lie.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, so beautifully put. Yeah, and it's just something that when you said that, it just correlated. And the other thing I want to say is, on that backside of the Turing wave, we have 3 dimensions of time, and that's what allows us to go anywhere we want. So we've got the ability to go anywhere we want because we have 3 different coordinates, and that gives us our 3 dimensions. And that one of space is our vehicle that we take through time traveling. So that's sort of how meditation works, actually, right? And we talk about that on your Patreon channel. And if anybody's really interested in deeply diving into subquantum kinetics, which is a level below quantum physics, we deeply dive into that. And we also deeply dive into the technologies that the Hawk, which is the hybrid aerospace undersea craft, uses for all of that as well, too. So highly recommended to go to her Patreon channel as well. Such cool things.
I always
Okay.
forget to say that.
Yeah, no, and I forget sometimes too, for sure, right? Because we're always into what we're doing here. So he claimed he was in communication with the wingmakers and that they were watching the ASIO's progress. At the appropriate time, the time capsule would be available to the public. Okay, the scientist was afraid that his memories would be tampered with and destroyed altogether. So he defected from the ACIO quite literally for the first time ever to do so. He is literally the first person that ever got out of there. And unfortunately, I think after these interviews with Anne, he disappeared. So either they got rid of him, or more likely, because he was so brilliant, they brought him back and they wiped his memories. And that's
Or
what
there's a third possibility,
he knew they were going to do that, and that's why he did what he did, right?
right? But
Yeah.
there's a third possibility
Oh, what's that?
that he contacted the wingmakers and that they were able to get him out.
Oh, never thought about that. That is a fantastic possibility, because we know once we deep dive into this that they had not only time travel, they actually had a really advanced form of time travel
Yeah.
that we're gonna get into, right, as we go along. So that is a fantastic point. Thank you for that one, Ligia. Yeah.
One I like to think about.
Yeah, no, I didn't even think about that. And of course that's Ligia always thinking in multi dimensions, because that yeah. And I get it, because I can do that too, but she's always on top of that, always, which is really cool, by the way. I love that. So before his disappearance, some of his materials regarding the wingmakers and the time travel capsule were given to a journalist that he had selected at random. The author, and that's Anne, right? The author of this document is the journalist. So we're reading what she wrote. This is the first document that I chose. There's 11 of them, including the two interviews that Anne had. And so this is stuff from the document. And as we go along, I'll try and tell you where exactly the stuff came from. I kind of forgot that at the beginning. The author of this document is the journalist. I am in possession of photographs, music, poetry, artwork, translation, indexes, copies of secret documents, and a variety of translated philosophy texts that all stem from the ancient era. Again, there were 5 interviews that we see on these websites, or this website, that she had at her possession, and she was anonymous, so we don't even know who she was. Actually,
Right.
That's the other thing about this, right?
Yeah. Name Anne is actually a pseudonym that we don't know who she is.
Yeah, and even the website, we don't even know who put up the website or where it came from either. It's totally anonymous.
There is somebody who claims to have done it, but we don't know if that's true.
Oh, okay. Maybe we'll dig into that next time, because I didn't know that.
Yeah.
We'll see what has to be said about that. So, Dr. Anderson had brought files of photographs and drawings of odd-looking technologies that had strange symbols engraved on their outer casings. So, hieroglyphs probably on these strange technologies. Research reports referring to the translation tables, cipher protocols, star charts, and dozens of memos from the ACIO. Okay, so dozens of memos. I have 4 memos that will be part of what we're reading. So there's obviously a lot more. Dozens of memos from the ACIO department heads discussing the Ancient Arrow project. Everything, including about 400 pages of philosophy text, had an authentic, sorry, it was authentic, and to it was unable to be reproached or ignored. So basically, he was saying that he was really, truly real. I trusted Dr. Anderson, who gave me these materials. He asked nothing from me. He desired no money or recognition. His only request was that I decide how to best bring these materials to the public. So that's Anne talking about it. Dr. Anderson told me that that this would be traced by the ACIO, who had the high level operatives both in the NSA and the CIA. So now we're talking about some pretty crazy bad organizations here that
Yeah.
were are tracing everything and whatnot, right?
Right.
I'm in possession of certain documents that I'll withhold from the Wingmaker's website. So obviously she had stuff that didn't go on there. Um, but anything were to happen to me, I've arranged for these documents to be shared with a major media company with whom I know. So she was worried about something happening to her, so she withheld some stuff. These documents provide evidence of a secret organization known as the ACIO, which is the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization. Dr. Anderson had warned me about the ACIO and how it was an advanced version of technology based on what he recalled, or what he called, remote viewing. So this is interesting because I know that Ligia is big into remote viewing as well. So they were saying, I think, that the remote viewing was kind of like you were saying, opening up the portals to see what was going on in certain times and whatnot, right?
Right. Well, time travel. They can use it as a way to time travel. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is exactly how they do it. Because in later shows, we're going to get into Project Pegasus, which was Andrew Basiago. His father was the chief scientist of Project Pegasus.
Right.
And it was literally the teleportation project with the US government. And my father had a friend, a very good friend of his that was involved with it that we'll talk about later on down the road. So it all kind of still relates back to time travel, teleportation, because it's all one essentially, right? Yeah. So one of the most intriguing scientific and archaeological discoveries ever made, a secret unacknowledged department of the NSA was responsible for extraterrestrial contact. So this is the ACIO. They're responsible for anything that's extraterrestrial contact or technology assimilation. Took the discovery into their laboratories for the purpose of their own agenda. So they've basically made it a secret. The secret organization is known as the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization, the ACIO, and has enjoyed complete anonymity, or they were anonymous up until now, up until 1997 when all this stuff came out, right? The discovery referred to by the ACIO as the Ancient Arrows Project consisted of 23 chambers and connecting tunnels hollowed out deep within a huge natural rock structure in a remote canyon of northern New Mexico. In each of the 23 chambers were found wall paintings of various alien technologies and strange encoded hieroglyphs. By most appearances, the discovery was like a natural history museum for an ancient race. That's wild. It became known amongst the researchers as ETC, extraterrestrial time capsule. So that's something that I kind of forgot about because they don't refer to it very often. But that's pretty interesting. So these guys are thinking that this is actual extraterrestrial time capsule. This time capsule was left behind by the extraterrestrials that had visited Earth in the 8th century AD. It was determined that the time capsule was actually designed and built by a future version of humankind. So essentially, that's us, who were able to interactively time travel. They called themselves the Wingmakers. So there, here we go. One of the scientists from the ACIO involved in developing the translation tables from the Ancient Arrow project defected in December of 1997 and had discovered that this ancient project, and disclosed this ancient project to a journalist named Anne. Anne is the author of the website, and under agreement with the affirmated scientist, which is Dr. Anderson, there are hundreds of pages of philosophy, pictures, poetry, new physics, which is why I wrote this down again. Ligia and I are actually going through subquantum kinetics, which is absolutely a new physics. Music, artifacts that were all found inside the site, and they were all derived from the Waymaker's time capsule. What follows are some of my notes taken while in earnest discussions with Dr. Anderson from the ACIO during the first 2 weeks of December 1997, before he had discovered at least off my radar screen, or sorry, before he had disappeared off my radar screen. He called me out of the blue one day in mid-December of 1997. His opening line to me was something like, "My name is Dr. Anderson, and I have secret information about the future of future mankind that proves the existence of time travel technology." Now, I know what Ligia would say if somebody said that to her, and I know what I would say, but most people would go, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Right?
Yeah.
Literally, right?
I wish you would have called me instead.
Oh, well,
Um,
you know what, Ligia? I would suggest that we have a lot of time to immerse ourselves in all of this, and you may be called anytime very soon, as a matter of fact. There might be a reason why you're actually doing this, because it's not me that will be called. Definitely, it would be you, because you're the one that has the big ringer from upstairs, the big phone from upstairs, literally, right? You know it. You know it. Now, having said that, I'm also from upstairs, and recently, and just a couple of days ago, we found out some more information about me and my galactic heritage. And yeah, I've probably had something to do with this as well, no doubt. So he told me that he had no recollection of his original parents, which is interesting. So this is Dr. Anderson. So was he an ET dropped in here? Like perhaps some people that we know, right? There's a possibility of that, especially if he doesn't remember his original parents. And this is really interesting what happened. And a high-ranking member of the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization had raised him for his entire life, and he was involved in one way or another with the ACIO. So they literally, either he was dropped in from somewhere or wherever he came from, but they literally took him under his wing, a high-ranking member, and brought him in. So again, this leads me back to, and I heard you go, oh, this leads me back to the Freemasons and all the organizations that they're involved with. So I think that they had the ultimate control of this, and that's kind of what I think, right? He claimed to have knowledge about physics and life science that is so far advanced of the best curriculum in the best universities.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's not hard to do.
yeah,
To be honest.
thank you for saying that, because it's totally true. So here we come up with the last, the 23rd topic that we're going to talk about today. And I chose 23 because of the 23 chambers. And there was so much good information that I just had to break it up into different shows, and we'll go through them as we go.
Yes.
Yeah. So he said that they had technologies that simulated certain aspects of the central nervous system. Now, this is really, really interesting. And I'll say this, why I say this right away is because Arcturians, compared to people on Earth, Terrans, learn 100 times faster. And part of the reason why is because our brain and our nervous system are more connected together. So our nervous system, which is what actually connects to the ether, there's a more of a direct connection with the ether. So we're able to process things much, much faster than normal. And that's interesting because they're saying that they're stimulating certain aspects of the nervous system. So this technology that they've got and stuff that we're going to go through with the wing makers actually will increase your fluid intelligence. And that's something that we're going to get into a little bit later. And we talk about it a little bit more here because it says that, yeah, it's stimulated certain aspects of the central nervous system and the brain that increased raw intelligence by as much as 500%.
Mm.
So imagine that, five
Right.
times, like 500%, so 5 times. In addition, he claimed that there was a genetic implant technology that increased the ability to memorize and retain information to the point where the entire scientific core of the ACIO had perfect photographic memory. So they're using, I think, technologies that were actually from this group that was helping them, that were extraterrestrial, in helping them increase their intelligence and the ability to have photographic memory, and that's the whole ACIO group.
I think
So
maybe it was partly stimulating the junk DNA, or what they call junk DNA.
you are 1,000,000% right. Again, you're so on it all the time. Absolutely,
That
absolutely, they
popped
were.
into my head. Yeah.
Yeah, like just it is not junk DNA, guys. It is absolutely magical stuff, and we just need to learn how to use it.
We
And
have crystals in our brain,
we have and we'll get into this in some other point. We have superconductors moving within our body,
We
even in
are
our blood.
superconductors.
Yes. You are correct again. Once again, she is correct. And this is why we like doing these shows together, because we are always thinking about the same things at the same time, which is something that happens with everyone, though, too, because once it goes out there in the ether, it's there for everyone, essentially.
Yeah,
And
we'll all
that's,
be connected. We'll be all
yeah.
connected, all of our brains, and yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to bring everybody up to that level so that they can connect with the
We
the
don't need,
consciousness of
yeah,
Terra and everyone, right?
consciousness. We don't need a Neuralink. We don't need an implant for us to be connected like this. We
Yep,
can do it organically. You don't
yep,
need any of that shit.
absolutely. So yeah, so they increased their memory capabilities, photographic memory. This enabled them to build their group intelligence beyond the genius of any one individual. So this is the ACIO just trying to make them all smarter. These technologies, he claimed, were of extraterrestrial origin. So here we are back to this again. Derived from a friendly source that had been visiting Earth for thousands of years, but arrangements were made with the ACIO dating from 1959. So this is kind of important too, that were secret even from our governments and its intelligence organizations.
That makes sense.
So now we're talking about, I think, again, control, ultimate control, like they had the whole planet controlled with the Freemasons and all the groups that they were involved with. So
And
they had their fingers in this as well.
what was going on in 1959?
Well, 1958 is when NASA was started, which is, there's a whole story there about Project Paperclip and NASA and how essentially, see, most people don't realize that we're actually in the Fourth Reich. Hitler didn't die. He was let go. They let him go to South America. Frank Chile, on one of his presentations, he knows Graham Buffoon, one of the pilots. In 1945, just after the war finished, Graham was flying in the Mediterranean, sorry, not the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, down there. And he saw 3 or 4 huge German submarines high in the water. And he radioed back to Pensacola, which is their headquarters, and he said, "Hey, what do you want me to do with these guys? Do you want me to bomb them, or what do you want to do?" And they said, "Which direction are they going?" And he said, "They're headed towards South America." And headquarters said, "Nope, leave them alone, let them go." So there's the ultimate proof, and it comes from somebody that we both know, Ligia, Frank Chili.
Right, I know.
Right? There it is right there in a nutshell. And the other thing that happened in 1958, I can't remember right now, but it has to do with NASA and
When
everything
was,
as well too.
Eisenhower?
Okay, and that's a good point. So Eisenhower,
That
the
around this
agreements
time?
were
I don't,
made in 1954.
oh, okay, that was before.
Okay, so Val Thor had come down to Earth a bunch of times, met with Eisenhower. He also went to Russia. A lot of people don't know that. He spent more time in Russia than he did anywhere, actually. That's an interesting fact. So it was the MJ-12
Oh, right,
who went behind the back of Eisenhower and signed an agreement with the extraterrestrials that were the Gray, the Draco, and the Germans, but through the Air Force.
right,
It was done through the Air Force, and the Navy, on the other hand, actually had William Tompkins, who Frank Chili personally knew and brought him to the public. Again, we know that these stories that we're bringing you are directly from the people, because we know all these people, right? So Frank Chili brought William Tompkins to the public, and William Tompkins was part of Solar Warden, and Solar Warden was in alliance with the good extraterrestrials. So they were the Pleiadians. There's probably some Arcturans in there, some Andromedans, and a whole bunch of other groups as well, right? And now we know they're all back. They're all back now. All of them are. All groups are back, and we'll eventually talk about that in some of Ligia's upcoming shows as well too, because
right.
I have a really good handle on galactic diplomacy and all of the structures out there of what's going on, and part of the reason why is some of the information that came up in the last couple of days and has through this year as far as my galactic heritage, but we'll talk about that down the road.
And not to cut you off, but we're coming up on 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, and
I don't know
I'm
how long we've
done.
been doing this. I have no idea. It seems like
And
it's,
I'm done. It's going to be a
no.
long one.
So I think I think we need to just wrap this one up, and we can come back and do a little bit more another time. But this
Yeah.
has been absolutely fascinating. And I'm really looking forward to the next one, because I'm sure we've got a lot more to go. I mean, this just is blowing my mind. If it's not blowing your mind, I don't know. I've heard this before, but every time I hear it, it just more things come out. Like, because more things have come to light since the last time I studied this. I mean, this was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So now it's even more timely. And yeah, it's just really amazing. So I'm going to stop sharing and just want to thank everybody for listening. And if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate it. And please leave a comment, because we'd love to hear from you. And I always
Yes, we
answer my
would.
comments. And also, if you want more information and more detailed information, exclusive videos that we can't post on YouTube, you can come to my Patreon channel, and that is patreon.com, and that's Potentials Podcast on Patreon. So thank you again for listening. We love you, and we really enjoy doing this kind of thing. So I appreciate you supporting it, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Ciao for now.